Welcome to Freaky Friday at the Bishop Museum. I'm Hadley Andersen. I'm a science educator here at the Bishop Museum, and with me today is Dr. Richard Pyle. He's our ichthyologist.
Hello.
And we're in our Planet Shark exhibit. And Richard, I understand you have some personal experience with a lot of sharks.
I do, yeah. I have a long history of diving and encountering sharks, and I figured that maybe it'd be fun just to tell some stories related to the exhibit on what I've seen and what I've done. So yeah, over the years. So we're starting here with this shark chainmail suit, which is a pretty simple concept. You put this big chainmail suit around you and it protects you from shark bites if a shark chooses to bite you. Now, it kind of doesn't serve a lot of function because it's extraordinarily rare that you're in the water as a diver and you're at any risk at all of being bitten by a shark.
Okay.
So that's a really, really low risk. There are only very, very few circumstances where it makes sense to wear one of these. And I was enlisted to wear one of these actually as a stunt double in a documentary film. And so I had to put one of these things on. It was off San Diego and the water was 2,000 feet deep. And we were only diving just in the top 20 feet, surrounded by blue sharks. And they just needed me to swim around, you know, wearing a rebreather, looking like I knew what I was doing. The problem is these things are really heavy. They're like 20, 30 pounds.
Yep.
And I normally don't even wear a weight belt. So I had to, when I wore this chainmail suit, have my buoyancy compensator fully inflated, right? So, and I'm in this suit and I'm like, have this buoyancy compensator fully inflated. And it's, you know, I'm kind of at this tedious balance where the suit's trying to drag me to the abyss and the buoyancy compensator, this inflatable bag, is trying to keep me up and sharks are swimming around. And it occurred to me that if a shark bit my buoyancy compensator, I would die because I couldn't get out of the suit, right? I have my gear on and there's no way I could offset the buoyancy. I couldn't swim against the weight of the suit. I would be dragged thousands of feet down.
So the buoyancy suit was on the outside?
Was on the outside
of
it, yeah.
Okay.
And so if a shark had bitten that, and once I realized that was the scariest moment I've ever been in the water, having nothing to do with the sharks circling us and everything about this damn suit that would drag me to the abyss. So anyway, that was an interesting moment.
Well, the interesting thing about these suits too is that they protect you from the bite, from the cutting into the, you know,
Yes.
cutting into your skin and stuff like that. But really, chainmail historically, it doesn't prevent you from blunt force. If you have a
Yes.
shark that's big enough, that has enough power in its jaws,
Yes.
you're still going to suffer some damage.
Exactly. A big white shark or a big tiger shark would crush your bones through this thing. So it will sort of keep you alive. I mean, I would say if I were about to be bitten by a shark, I would be really happy to be wearing one of these at that time. But be very careful if you're swimming out over blue water.
I think it's interesting that the biggest concern you had was not necessarily that a shark was going to bite you, but
Right.
it was going to bite your
That was my
bones.
last concern. Yeah, exactly. Just sinking into the abyss uncontrolled.
Well, where else? We have a lot of sharks in this
Yeah,
exhibit.
let's walk around and look at some of these exhibits and I'll tell stories. All right, so up here on top of the kiosk is a bull shark.
Now,
And
bull sharks are known for being really aggressive, right?
yes, they are. And I read somewhere once that they have the highest levels of testosterone of any animal measured, which tells you something right there.
Right.
But my first encounter with a bull shark, actually, I wasn't in the water. I was at the Okinawa Aquarium in Japan. And they had this huge tank with sharks in it, and, you know, and big glass wall, and I kind of stood up right against the glass wall, and it was really murky water for some reason. And out of the gloom comes this tiger shark. And I thought, oh cool, they have a tiger shark in here. And he comes in and he goes right past my nose, and I'm like, wow, that's awesome. You know, I'm standing outside the glass, safely protected. And then out of the gloom comes this big fat thing, and my first reaction was I had no idea they had a great white shark on display here, and that's what I thought it was. And as it came out of the gloom, I saw that it wasn't a white shark, it was a bull shark, a big, beefy, fat bull shark. And I literally stepped back from the glass. It was so intimidating. Yeah, so bull sharks just, I don't know, scare me. Now, since then, I've been diving in Fiji, where they have these bull shark encounters with on this shark reef in Fiji, and they do a really great job. They actually feed the sharks, and you sit back and
Oh,
you
wow.
watch this big group of 40 or 50 large bull sharks eating tuna heads and things. It is really exciting.
Okay.
But nobody's ever been attacked or bitten there that I know of, so it's actually probably a safe activity. But it's one of the more intimidating sharks. The other little fact about bull sharks, it's kind of spooky, is they'll go into fresh water. So sometimes bull sharks will swim up rivers and lakes. So sometimes people, if they're swimming in rivers near the ocean, they think they're safe. Well, they live where bull sharks, maybe not so much.
Well, I actually grew up in Florida, and especially on the Indian River, which is an estuary area, and so we are known for bull sharks. Funny enough, I moved out to Hawaii 5 years ago. I happened to be sitting down and watching Discovery Channel, and River Monsters comes up, and I look up, and it happens to be, I'm like, I know that inlet, that's my hometown. They were actually looking for bull sharks where I had been swimming most of my life, and I had never encountered one. It was really weird.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, again, sharks in general don't pose much of a real threat to humans, but there are cases where they do, and bull sharks probably represent one of those cases.
Now, we saw a blue shark on the wall
Yes.
over here, so let's talk about that.
Yeah, so if we walk around,
Well,
first let's start with this oceanic whitetail. Now, these used to be one of the most common sharks in the world because they live out in the ocean. They're very, very widely distributed, and they rarely encounter humans because they live out in the open ocean. But because of the shark finning industry and other things, the populations of these guys have been really suppressed, which is bad. I've never been in the water with one. I have friends who have been, and on our most recent cruise to the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, a very unusual encounter. Almost every time you see one of these sharks, it's in blue open ocean, over thousands of feet deep. But in this case, I wasn't on the dive, but my friends were down there 300 feet on the bottom, and one of these guys buzzed down to come check him out, which was a really weird thing. Nobody'd ever seen one come down like that before, so that was kind of cool. But I'd love to be in the water with these. They were made famous in the 1970s movie called Blue Water, White Death. It sounds kind of horrific, but it was one of the first high-quality documentaries about sharks, and they did a really good job. But one of the scenes was they went out and did some diving where a whale had been taken by a whaling ship, and there were just hundreds of these oceanic whitetips just swarming around. Some of the most incredible footage I've ever seen of sharks, and that was back in the 70s. Anyway, so that's kind of a cool shark. So another pelagic shark over here is the blue shark. Now, I've only been in the water with a blue shark once, and that was when I was in the chainmail sea that I talked about before. They're generally not considered terribly dangerous. They do, they're pretty widely distributed. They live in open ocean areas. But like I say, I've never seen them here in Hawaii, even though they're found here. I have seen them only off California. But I'll tell you what, this is actually the coolest shark to me.
it's got a really awesome tail.
Yeah. This is like this iconic shark, the thresher shark. It's got this enormous, enormous tail, and it's like one of the fantasies of most divers to see one of these underwater. They generally live out in pelagic areas also, in very deep water, so divers don't usually encounter them. I've been in the water with them 3 times, and each time it's been like an amazing experience. The first time was the most amazing. It was in New Guinea. It was about 400 feet deep on a very remote reef. And I was down there, and out of the gloom, a whole group of them, bigger than this one, so they were close to 20 feet long, just come out. And some were below me, and some were right next to me, and some were above me. I could see these big, graceful tails. It was just, they weren't threatening at all. One of them came really close to me, and its eye, I swear, was the size of a dinner plate. Just this huge shark with this huge tail. And then they all just swam off into the gloom. So that was kind of cool. And my most recent encounter was just a couple of weeks ago up in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, where we see lots of sharks. We see Galapagos sharks and other species, but I saw one out in the distance, and I kind of saw something looks weird about a tail, and as it came in, I saw it had this great big enormous tail. So it's always a treat to see a thresher shark.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sure, wow.
It's really cool. They're not dangerous as far as idea of what they use this tail for, to help them herd fish as they're trying to eat fish. They essentially use the tail to try to bring the fish in and wrap their bodies around.
Right.
So.
Something this trait this exaggerated almost seems like just out of prehistoric kind of thing.
Yeah, it's very unique. There's a couple of species of thresher sharks, but they all have this great big tail.
Fantastic.
All right, one other little thing over here. So we don't have a model, but we have this picture of a black-tip reef shark. So this was one of my actual first encounters, really up close with sharks. When I was a teenager in high school, I volunteered for Waikiki Aquarium, and we used to go down to Christmas Island in the Line Islands and catch little baby pup black-tip sharks for display at Waikiki Aquarium and elsewhere around the world. They would ship them out to other public aquariums to display them. And the way we'd catch them is we'd wander out over the sand flats. The water was only about shin deep, and we'd have these big nets, and we'd walk out till we see a shark, and then we'd all chase it and herd it and chase it around and try to scoop it up with a net. And we caught a bunch of sharks that way, and they all ended up going on public display throughout many different aquariums and lived for many, many, many years in captivity. So I feel good about that, because even though it's you know, you're taking sharks out of nature. They lived long, happy, healthy lives with all the food they could eat without any risk of being eaten by larger sharks. And they played an important role of helping to educate people about sharks. So I feel they actually became ambassadors for their species. So I don't feel bad. So finally here we have the tiger shark. So this is the king of the jungle, so to speak, especially here in Hawaii. I've seen tiger sharks on a handful of occasions. The most recent it was off Maui just last year. We were off Oluwalu and doing a deep dive with the NOAA cruise, and we came up for a decompression. And it was the one dive I decided not to bring my camera. You know, I normally have my camera with me. And I just thought, you know, I've been on these dives before. I think today I'm not going to bring my camera. And of course, that was the dive where one of these guys just came gliding right in so gracefully. Just came right past me. And my first reaction was, I wish I had my camera. But then I realized, you know what, I'm just going to absorb this moment. And it was just a magical moment of this big, graceful tiger shark just gliding from me to you, this close, just gradually swimming by and then just moving on. Not threatening in any way, just that sort of moment between two organisms acknowledging each other. So.
That's amazing. And of course, tiger sharks are kind of known as like the garbage gets in the ocean too. They eat just about anything.
They have that reputation for eating all kinds of different things. Luckily, humans are very rarely on their menu. Now, when shark attacks do happen in Hawaii, often it's this species, but it usually happens to people at the surface, body surfers and swimmers and surfers, and we suspect it probably has to do with mistaken identity. They're mistaking a person for a turtle or seal or something like that. It doesn't seem to often be the case that they're actually hunting a human intentionally.
Right.
So given how many tiger sharks we have in Hawaii and how many people we have in the water, your probability of getting hit by a tiger shark is very, very low. But when it does happen, quite often this is the culprit.
Well, Rich, thank you so much for joining us
Absolutely.
today. And I loved hearing all of your stories about sharks, and I look forward to hearing more stories about interesting fish that you've discovered in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands and everything like that.
Great. Well, thank you. And thank you guys, too.
So thanks for joining us on this Freaky Friday. Hopefully we'll continue this, and we'll have more interesting science stories to share with you on upcoming Fridays. And aloha.
Aloha.